Hello and welcome. I'm Marguerite Picard, a Director of MELCA. My co-director here is Tricia Peters, Financial Planner, and our co-founder is Dr. Tina Sinclair, who is a psychologist and who these days lives and works in Canada, and her business there is known as Peacemakers for Families. Today I'm speaking to Sallyanne Hartnell. Sallyanne is a divorce coach, and this video is one in our series of interviews with people who work in the area of family separation. And we're trying to show the various supports that are out there for people who are considering separation or who are separated. Sallyanne is going to speak to us about what divorce coaching is and what she does in working with her clients. So it's really great to be having this conversation with you. I think divorce coaching is not so well known in Australia. And it would be great if you could just let us have an idea about what brought you to this work, and then perhaps we can talk a little bit more about what you actually do.
Sure. It's lovely to be here, so thanks for the chance to speak with you, Marguerite. My journey is, like many of us who work supporting families going through separation, was really born of my own divorce, separation and divorce. Mm-hmm. Originally, I trained as a physiotherapist, so I've always worked in the healing and supportive sort of service-based space, and I bring those skills with me, and I find they're really applicable in my work as a divorce coach. As I said, my business Reflect Coaching was born out of my own experience. My ex-husband and I separated 13-ish years ago, and we have quite an amicable relationship. We've always shared our kids' birthdays, significant events. We attend school functions and things together. We've even holidayed together with our kids a few times.
So you've really found ways to make it work.
We have, and we made a pact when we separated to keep our kids out of the conflict as much as we could. Mm-hmm. But back then, collaborative family law wasn't as well known or as widely practiced. I struggled to find the support that we wanted as a family. We could access psychologists and we could access legal practitioners who sort of got what we were trying to do, but I felt that there was a gap in the support. And
for you as an individual or for you as a couple?
I think for us as a couple, particularly myself as an individual, but I know Mike, my ex-husband, was looking for support too, and we were determined that we wanted it to be collaborative. We didn't want it to become litigious, and we just could not find the support that we required. So we bumbled through, and as I said, we have a really amicable relationship. It's by no means perfect. We are divorced for very good reasons, but we do manage to get along. And that has led other people to come and ask us, particularly me, how did you do it? Which then led on to me really actioning on that gap in the market or that lack of support that I found when I divorced, and retraining and launching my business to support women initially, then expanding to men to just navigate the non-legal aspects of their separation and divorce.
And that's interesting that you talk about the non-legal aspects, because I think lots of us collaborative practitioners would say that law doesn't feature very largely in anyone's separation, that the emotional and the financial fallout are far greater than the legal questions. So that is something that I completely connect with. Can I just take you to the kind of people you see and when you see them? So if, for example, a person is considering separation, is that a person who you would see to support, or are most of the people you work with people who have already made the decision or their partner has made the decision to separate?
Most of the people that I work with have actually made the decision. I'll often run a session with one or other member of a couple who is considering separating.
Okay.
And they may then choose to reconnect with a partner or work on the marriage or step further down the separation pathway. But generally, the clients I work with have already decided to separate, or they are at the end of their family law matter and ready to sort of relaunch themselves, I suppose.
Yes.
So there are those two quite distinct times in a family, in a family's journey through separation and divorce, where clients tend to come and work with me.
So you can support people during the separation, but you're also talking about relaunching life post-separate or post-divorce.
Absolutely. And I do try with clients who contact me early in their separation, I try very much to get them to focus on that end point, which I guess leads me to talk about how coaching works.
Yeah. So it sounds like it comes from a place of optimism that there is a point where life will feel different and better than the way it feels when people first start working with you.
Yeah.
But it would be really helpful, I think, if you could give us a bit of an understanding of how your work actually takes place. So, people kind of have an initial meeting with you. How many times are they going to meet? What are the homework tasks that they have? What do you do? What do they do? How does the partnership actually work? That would be really helpful, I think, for people who are interested in this. And I know that as a lawyer, I very often have clients who could really do with some extra support. And maybe it's not counselling or therapeutic support, but just support from somebody who connects with them, understands what they're going through. And I suspect that very often for clients who are working with litigation lawyers or lawyers who they're paying a lot of money to, they don't want to be having these kind of conversations with their lawyer, even if the lawyer had the skills. And so I'm interested to know how you fit with the work that the other professionals are doing and what the support actually looks and feels like.
Sure. That's a big question.
It's a big question. A statement maybe.
So there are two main ways that clients work with me. I offer a one-off 3-hour strategy session, which is really designed to get people out of that overwhelmed, what do I do, what do I need to do, where do I need to be accessing support, what do I need to take for my lawyer, how do I deal with the financial separation. So while I'm not trained in law or finance, I can support and guide a client to formulate their own plan. So there's a one-off session that I offer, and I also offer a coaching series of 6 sessions. So it's that initial session and then fortnightly or thereabouts sessions afterwards. Some clients continue to work with me after they've completed their 6 initial sessions.
And are they one-on-one, the 6
Absolutely.
sessions?
One-on-one.
Okay.
Yeah. And even most often we work via Zoom.
Okay.
Or
that's
telephone.
Interesting. Your initial meeting would be face-to-face?
If possible, face-to-face. But I also work with clients who are not based geographically in Melbourne, and that means that I can still support clients who
work effectively on Zoom.
Can't access. So in that going back to the coaching series, 6 sessions in that initial session, we will set, with the client, I will work to set almost a manifesto for how they would like their divorce to be.
Okay.
We look forward, we look future focused, and define how they want their life to look, feel and be at the end of the divorce. Even beyond that, if we can, depending on the client, sometimes we can future focus a little bit further, 5, 10, 15 years, and then we step backwards from there. Right. So we formulate a step-by-step plan, as you said, homework, action steps.
Yes. So I'm interested in that idea of the goal setting. I understand that. Can you just fill me in a little bit? I don't mean this to be a difficult question. What happens if I have a particular view of how I want my life to be and my partner from whom I'm separating has a completely different view or is going to get in the way of my goals?
That's a common challenge, as I'm sure you would appreciate. I often find that I'm working with clients on what they can control, what is within their power to control, and what they need to let go.
Okay.
And so I guess that would be how we work on that.
And how they respond, I suppose.
Reactivity is huge. So if we can minimise reactivity, as you know, we can minimise the conflict.
Yes.
And I often find I'm working with clients on their mindset and their capacity to minimise the reactivity, tips and strategies so that they can move forward rather than stay stuck in their story or stuck where they are. So to answer that question, I really try to work closely with the client to support them to know what they can control and what they can't.
And the tips and strategies that you speak about, can you give me some examples of those? Are we talking about communication coaching?
Very often, yes. Tips and strategies around how to respond, when to remain silent, even modes of communication.
Okay.
Don't pick up the phone when you're angry. Don't fire off. Minimise your reactivity. So really working on practical strategies. I even offer almost an editing service.
I was wondering
send
about that.
Send your email. Send that angry email or frustrated email that you would like to send. Send it to me. We'll workshop it, and then you can send it once you're more comfortable and you're calmer. And I find that is a really useful way to guide clients as to minimising the conflict, I suppose. If they can, I can communicate on their behalf, or I can edit their communication on their behalf because I'm not emotionally invested.
Yes.
So that means that they basically learn from.
So you're modelling some things. So there's education, there's support.
Exactly.
Involved in what you're doing.
Yeah, so it's not a done-for-you service, it's a guided teaching service. And I guess that's why we're called coaches. There is a parallel between a life coach or a divorce coach and a sporting coach. You know, a sporting coach cannot play the match for their players, but they can set the training so that they're ready to play. They can also advise in the midst of the game, and they can ensure that their players are well prepared. Yeah,
that's an interesting parallel. I suppose it's kind of obvious in some ways, the sporting parallel and the coach. And I'm not sure whether everybody understands what coaching actually means. In general parlance, we know there are lots of different types of coaches, life coaches, less so about divorce coaches. But I like that idea that you're not a decision maker, you're there supporting, educating, and kind of holding a person's hand through the journey. So you're not the lawyer, you're not the relationship counsellor, you're somebody who's there for them alone, but understanding what their needs are outside of the legal system, and to understand what it is to be going through that.
Yeah, and I think it helps that I bring my personal experience of divorce, but not only that, as we discussed earlier, my previous career history and previous skills of deep listening, analysis, problem solving that I use as a physiotherapist, and also that element of healing. You know, there's a lot of pain involved when families and couples separate, and if we can minimise that pain, then the outcomes for couples, for individuals, for children, just much more positive. I find it really fascinating to think about your background as a physiotherapist and as a healer, because people do need to heal from divorce, and it's certainly not something we talk about in the legal community. We do in the collaborative community, of course, but the idea that this becomes mainstream, that we talk about people healing and that you're there to support somebody through that, I think makes a lot of sense to people. Yeah, I think so. I think that, well, as I said, when I divorced all those years ago, that support was lacking.
You wish there was a you.
I wished it was, yes. I needed me.
Yes. And it would be good, I think, if we get some real live examples of some things that you've done. And I have come across, I've done my research, some quotes from some of your clients, and I wondered if I could read one of them to you, and if you can reflect back on that person and what the change in their journey was, or maybe some of the individual things that they brought to you to help them with. So I'll read two and you can take your pick. The first one was a person who says, working with Sallyanne was the best decision I ever made. A lifesaver, smart and organised, a critical thinker, strategic and nurturing. And there's another one who says, Sallyanne helped cut through the noise with advice and thinking that was well-informed, empathetic and very timely. I would highly recommend her for anyone going through a separation or divorce. So I don't know whether they're clients whose stories you still remember and connect with, but
both very much.
Okay, so it would be, I think, really helpful if we could understand what they were going through when you first met them and the things that you were able to help them with.
So the second quote was from a male client who contacted me early in his separation. He and his wife had recently separated. It was a mutual decision, however, probably driven more by him. They had 4 children.
Right.
All still at school.
Right.
Ranging maybe 15 down. I can't quite remember. And we ran just a few sessions together. What had happened was that he had offered a beginning point to his wife on financial agreement,
right,
which she took quite
badly.
She was, I think, surprised by it. He had intended it as a beginning point. She took it in a different way and engaged a lawyer, collaborative lawyer, which was great. So I worked with this client really to get him to see things from another perspective, why his wife might be responding the way she was, and a lot of that I felt was fear-based. So if he could cut through and alleviate her fears,
yes,
then they would.
Sure. So he talks about cutting through the noise, and I'm wondering whether that was lots of advice from, your friends and helpers, and it's not always helpful advice. Is that the kind of noise he was talking about?
Yes, and I think a lot of internal noise.
Okay.
So he did have quite a number of people offering him advice, which, as you said, is not always the most useful or helpful or even correct advice.
Usually well-intended.
Coming from a loving place, but often not helpful and definitely not objective.
Yeah.
So he found that my objectivity was useful.
Okay.
There's also a lot of internal noise for him, stories that he was telling himself about the relationship and about his wife and what she was doing and why she was doing it. So we stepped through some of that and enabled him to, as I said before, see things more clearly from a different perspective. And they did manage to step forward on a collaborative family law path.
Okay, that's really interesting. So you're talking about perspective, which we do talk a lot about in collaborative practice, and it seems to be a foundational stepping stone that everybody has to understand that there is more than one perspective, because without that you can't really reach an agreement that endures, I suppose. So that's interesting. And the first person, or the first quote, where she was, or she, I don't know, whether it was a she, was talking about the critical thinking, being smart and organised. And it sounded like that person must have been feeling a bit adrift.
She was very, very much so. Again, single mum, 2 teenagers, with a very a tricky, litigious situation. Thank you. And quite overwhelmed.
Right, okay.
Dealing with, as I said, 2 teenagers who weren't particularly coping well, but also a barrage of stuff coming from the other side, both from lawyer and from ex-husband, or husband at that point, but separated. So for her, it was really important to minimise her reactivity, as we were talking before, stop firing off emails in response, and enabling her to do that also minimised her legal costs, because it was starting to escalate.
Yeah. So you're helping her to filter some things for priority importance, I guess.
And really just stepping her through some organisational things.
Yeah. Okay.
What do you need? What does your lawyer need? What does your accountant need? So smart and strategic thinking, but really giving that back to the client and empowering her to do it herself.
Huge value in the empowerment.
Absolutely.
But I'm really interested in what you're talking about as the coaching can enable people to work more efficiently and effectively with their lawyers and thereby reduce their legal costs, and perhaps the same thing with accountants. And I think it's something we don't speak enough about. I think, most lawyers who work in this area do so with a great deal of goodwill, but it's extremely difficult when a client is overwhelmed and there's a lot of stuff coming to you, and to have somebody to filter that out and organise it for the lawyer would, from my perspective, I can see the benefit for me of my clients having that help as well as for them. And I honestly don't think lawyers enjoy billing clients to read emails that they can't be helpful about, for example, and doing work that isn't really the work that we're skilled and trained to do. So I can see the parallels, the partnerships that lawyers and divorce coaches could be developing, but I suspect that lots of lawyers just don't understand what you do and how that could work. So I think this is a great opportunity to discuss that further. And I'm wondering whether that's something that you speak about to your clients in the beginning. Is it something you observe, that people are able to work more effectively with their lawyers?
I definitely speak about it.
Yeah.
I talk a lot about the costs of divorce.
Yeah.
And yes, there is a financial cost, but there are many, many other costs.
Sure.
Emotional, mental, they can be physical, in terms of our well-being.
Yeah.
So I believe divorce coaching, and coaching with me particularly, is powerful in minimising those costs. And as you said, if a client's working with me, they're more organised, they're less reactive, they know what they want,
yes,
and they are able to look at other perspectives. They're clear on their wants versus their needs versus their wants,
yes,
and where they're willing to compromise. Then they can move forward. They can actually offer instruction,
yes,
to their lawyer,
yes,
rather than a long-winded telephone call or email thread whereby they're not actually moving forward.
Yes.
So there's power in the collaboration between a lawyer and a divorce coach.
I can see that.
It takes things off the lawyer that they don't want or need to,
yes,
or are
just
not
aren't
skilled
trained to deal with,
trained to manage.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so in a sense that's reducing a negative, but I'm interested in what you spoke about well-being. And so this is a really positive offering for people, that sense of well-being, which is an outcome of the coaching.
Yeah.
But something you're very much supporting along the way.
Often in the early initial consult that I have with clients, we talk about putting your own well-being number one, particularly if there are children and the client that I'm working with is the prime carer. It's easy to put everybody else's needs ahead of your own, but it's vital at times of high stress to maintain your own sense of well-being. So yes, I strongly support clients and advise and guide them to take care of their own well-being primarily.
Yeah, and I can see when everything feels urgent and a person's overwhelmed, that's the time when we are less able actually to look after ourselves. And so having that objective outsider to remind people to think about themselves sounds like a really helpful aspect of what you do. And if somebody's really in a critically difficult stage when you meet them, would you refer them to other professionals for help?
Yes, absolutely. Coaching is not counselling. I'm not a trained counsellor. I'm not a psychologist. And a client needs to be able and willing to do the work to work with me as their coach. If they really need that deeper support, I will absolutely refer them on.
Yes, but they're compatible. Continuing divorce coaching work with somebody who's reached out for some other kind of therapeutic support. There's no barrier to doing both things.
There's no barrier to doing both things. No, not at all.
Yes.
But there are some clients who approach me to work with me who are just perhaps not quite ready.
Yes, okay.
So refer them on. They'll work with their psychologist or their counsellor for a few sessions, or however long, and then they may come back and coach. And often they are the ones who I coach at the end of their family law matter, when they're really ready to reset themselves and
Yes.
redefine how they want their life to look and feel afterwards.
And I'd really like to speak about that a bit more in a moment, but you used the word ready and readiness a couple of times then. And I guess that we would both understand from the work that we do that when couples separate, they're not necessarily at the same place, are they?
They're not.
And so I guess that there is work to do before a person can accept or hear coaching if they're grieving and angry and devastated, if they've not been the decision maker. But moving through the divorce coaching and time, hopefully doing some of that healing, you're moving towards a place where you can help people to reimagine, I guess, their future life.
Yes.
And that's really interesting and sounds like such a positive aspect of the work you do. So would you like to speak a bit more about that?
It's probably one of my favourite parts of my work.
Yeah.
I have clients who say, it changed my life. The coaching journey, the coaching process changed my life. I don't believe that I change people's lives. They change themselves. They change their life themselves. But I do love guiding people through from a point of pain to a reawakening or a rebirth. I'm not quite sure how to describe that, but just a redesign of their life. And that comes from that process of sitting together, working together to define exactly how you as my client want your life to look and feel 5, 10,
however many
15 years in the future, which can be very difficult to do in such an emotionally charged space, but powerful.
Yes.
Because it enables clients to, as you said, have hope, look forward and know that things get better.
Yeah. And I'm wondering if when you first meet with clients, having the experience of having coached people through and coaching people to reimagine their lives after all of the legal stuff is concluded, I'm wondering if you feel the presence of that power when you speak to people in the beginning, that you can bring that optimism, you can share with them the fact that this can be better, what effect that has on people.
I think it's quite evident when people meet with me or speak with me that I do bring that positivity. I live it.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite attractive to people. You can feel that energy.
Yes.
And having guided, coached a number of people through the process, I know that it's possible. So, yeah.
Well, I think it sounds like a really wonderful thing for people to access. And obviously they can contact you directly or contact us here at MELCA for referrals to Sallyanne and Anne-Marie Cade, who runs Divorce Right, also is a divorce coach who we work with and have connected with. I think the services that you both offer, although different, you come from different places, but I think it's a wonderful thing that there's options for people out there, which seems to be in some part about reducing the loneliness of the journey.
Yeah, very much so. And that powerful knowledge, offering that powerful knowledge and that hope that things get better.
Yes.
You can redesign, redefine your life.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a divorce doesn't have to be as destructive as it's made out to be.
Yeah, and you've lived the experience and you bring that to people. And I think it sounds like a wonderful thing for people to access. So thank you for coming in and speaking to us about that today.
Thank you.
It's been really great for me to get a much better understanding about what can happen for people, and helps me to explain to my clients that there's something out there which is really positive for them and that's going to help them in ways that I can't.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.